Did DoorDash finally make a new pilot program that doesn't fuck the driver? The short answer to that question is no. In fact, participation in this program puts your account and the money you have already earned in jeopardy. What's going on, everybody? My name is Zach. I hope you are doing well. Before we get into the video, if you're new here, please do consider pressing the like and subscribe button so you never miss news, tips, tricks, and ride-alongs with a healthy dose of humor. When I first started hearing about hourly pay on DoorDash, I was pretty confused as we're independent contractors and not W-2 employees. I remember thinking, how can they legally pay us an hourly rate? I started hearing whispers about hourly pay approximately 6 months ago, so like many of you, I turned to YouTube. I watched a great video on the subject by Nathan Nephew. You can find a link to Nathan's video in the description. Now, I realize I'm behind the ball making this video, and several other creators have given their input, so I figured I'd give mine. I've done a lot of research on this program. That coupled with Nathan's video, information on DoorDash's website, Reddit, and years of dealing with Tony's shenanigans. I've got a pretty strong opinion on the subject. Shocker, I know. When I say the words hourly pay, what comes to mind? If you're anything like me, you would assume that somebody making $10 an hour who worked for 2 hours would end up with $20. But this isn't your typical hourly rate where you're paid whether you're busy or not. No. See, this is Tony's f***ed up version of an hourly rate, but we'll dive deep into that in just a minute. Let's take a moment to look at DoorDash's website and see what they have to say about the subject. This section is called How This Works. Choose to earn by time option when starting your Dash. Dash and complete your deliveries. You can decline up to 1 offer every hour. If you decline more, the Dash will end. You'll still be able to earn the usual way instead. Get paid a guaranteed rate per hour while on deliveries plus tips. Earnings are based on total delivery time from accepting to drop off. You'll keep 100% of your tips on top of that. The link to this article will be in the description as well. Some of the janky fuckery you're going to hear in this video is wild and kind of unbelievable, so I would strongly encourage you to click that link for yourself. Make sure to stick around to the end of this video because there is a catch in the documentation that could get you deactivated and lose your money, all at no fault of your own. But for now, let's go back to the hourly pay. Let's use $14 as an example. If your assumption is that you could work 2 hours and have $28, you'd be wrong. Let's jump back to DoorDash's website and find out in their own words how much you'll really make per hour. You can find this gem under the frequently asked questions. This is titled, What's an example of how I would get paid? Let's assume that the active hourly guarantee for earn by time in your city is $14 an hour. You choose earn by time and begin your Dash. After a few minutes of waiting, you are offered and accept an order and drive 10 minutes to the restaurant. You wait 5 minutes at the restaurant, then drive 15 minutes to deliver the order. In this example, you spent 30 minutes actively on the delivery, which includes the drive to the restaurant, the wait at the restaurant, and then the drive to drop off the order. For your active 30 minutes, you'll receive DoorDash pay at a rate of $14 per hour, which comes out to $7 plus 100% of any tips on top of that. If your delivery had a $6 tip, then you'd get a total pay of $13 for this delivery. I don't know if I'm just old school, but when I hear hourly, I assume that means hourly. Full stop. This is yet another example of DoorDash making drivers think that we're getting something that we're not. Without reading the fine print, most of us would assume that we're going to make $14 per hour. For example, if you work 1 p.m. to 2 p.m., you should make $14. However, that is not the case here. For years now, DoorDash has been lowering base pay quarter by quarter, and it's long been my assumption that eventually we'll see orders with a base pay as low as $1. But this is worse. But we'll come back to the why in a moment. With this, there is no base pay. Essentially with this, you're getting paid per active work minute. This means you will not get paid when you're waiting for an offer to come through. It also means you won't get paid for your return trip. Essentially, it's not $14 per 60 minutes. That $14 could take you substantially longer than 1 hour to earn. And for those of you who will inevitably make the point that we're not getting paid the other way either, we're going to come back to that in just a moment as well. Now that I understand how this program works, I understand how they're legally getting away with it. Here's an example. If you retain an attorney, they usually bill per active minute that they're working on your case. Now, that attorney is doing work for you. However, they are not your employee. Similarly, DoorDash is not paying an hourly rate. An hourly rate means you're getting paid every 60 minutes that you're there, whether you're busy or not. Not to mention, that usually includes a 15-minute paid break for every X number of hours that you work. However, if you pause your Dash with this hourly pilot program, you're not going to get paid. Let's call this what it really is. False advertising. Take a look at this screenshot. That says $14 per hour. If they were forthcoming, they would advertise that as 23 cents per active minute. And that is the real truth. But for a moment, let's ignore all of that and give DoorDash the benefit of the doubt. They're saying we'll earn $14 an hour plus tips. I'd like to draw your attention to DoorDash's own website, where they themselves say that Dashers average $25 an hour. So, what is it? Is it $14 an hour or is it $25 an hour? But who knows? Maybe after tips, the $14 an hour turns into $25 an hour. Having said that, DoorDash knows with this pilot program, you're likely to have a 100% acceptance rate. You are going to be served the orders that nobody else wants to take, so DoorDash doesn't have to bonus or refund them. Have fun with that shit. Let's not forget, the customers that don't feel that our time is worth a few dollars in the form of a tip are also the customers who will leave 1-star ratings and cause contract violations. I've been driving long enough that I know DoorDash doesn't do anything beneficial for the drivers. The high pay order program, which I was a part of, is a joke. They were the same orders, just with a fancy graphic attached to them. If you want to hear about my experience in that program, I'll pop up a link at the end of the video. And then there's Top Dasher, which was, and still is, a fucking scam. And let's not forget the gem where they promised us increased base pay for longer mileage orders, which we don't get. These things all have one thing in common. They incentivize getting substantially more orders delivered faster, regardless of driver pay. And that is exactly what we're seeing with this program. Many months back, I watched an interview with Christopher Payne on the Rideshare Guys YouTube channel. For those of you who don't know who Christopher Payne is, he was the president of DoorDash. During the interview, Payne explained that the individual driver's acceptance rate isn't as important to DoorDash as how quickly the order gets accepted. Now, if you want to check out that interview, I'll put a link to it in the description, but be warned, it may make you mad as he gives some pretty belittling answers. I have to be honest. I did some basic math, and occasionally the driver will come out ahead with this model versus base pay. The key word there is occasionally. Having said that, my calculations assumed the best case scenario. For example, higher mileage runs keeping you in your zone with a respectable customer tip. But let's be real, we're talking about DoorDash. There's the very real possibility that you are going to be served the $2.50 10-mile runs that rational drivers should never accept. One massive problem with this program is you don't see any upfront payment information or an item count. So, if there is a tip, you are completely in the dark. Now, them hiding tip information is particularly egregious to me as they have been caught stealing our tips in the past. Not to mention, they continue to allow merchants to do so. In my opinion, the words hidden tip are bad enough, but no upfront information is even worse. I want to jump back to occasionally the driver will win. This confused me because DoorDash doesn't do anything that benefits the driver. They only do things that benefit themselves. There's one big distinction between previous pilot programs and this one. Virtually all of their previous pilot programs have required an unrealistically high acceptance rate. But this virtually guarantees a 100% acceptance rate. So, what does that mean for DoorDash? That means that orders aren't late, they're not having to bonus orders, and they're not having to refund customers. Even though occasionally a driver might win pay-wise, DoorDash is the real winner. That is why we're seeing this new pilot. Now, I've said a couple of times that sometimes the driver might come out ahead. Sometimes. But I want to take a moment to talk about the markets that they're currently piloting this program in. DoorDash is testing this program in Houston, Texas, and Lansing, Michigan. Now, these are not small markets. Lansing has a population of 112,000, and Houston has a population of 2.3 million. Now, I may be wrong about this, but from my own research, I couldn't find a single small market piloting this. Why is that? Frequently, drivers in smaller markets are forced to accept what they can get. Therefore, DoorDash just doesn't have a need to test this program there. Now, of course, these are just my personal opinions, and you should certainly formulate your own. However, this seems to me like this is nothing more than DoorDash trying to save themselves money. Now, I drive in a market similar in size to Lansing, and if you can't find a way to make more than $14 an hour, you're doing it wrong. And that's a real hour, not Tony's fucked up version. For those of you who are worried that this is going to become the new norm, I'd like to give you a bit of reassurance. I want to preface this next part by saying I am going to keep my political opinions out of this, and I respectfully ask that you keep them out of the comment section. Recently, the Federal Trade Commission announced that they would be investigating and monitoring various companies within the gig space. I watched a few videos from other content creators on the subject, and unfortunately, one major piece of information was left out of all of the videos that I personally watched. The FTC made it very clear that they will not be pushing for a change in our independent contractor status. They are not trying to move us to a W-2 status. And therefore, gig companies cannot transition to a truly hourly model. Frankly, this subject could be a video in and of itself, which I may or may not make at some point in the future. Another thing I find alarming about this pilot program is the fact that you can only decline one order per hour. If you decline more, your dash will be ended. As most of you know, DoorDash likes to send out push notifications saying that we missed a delivery opportunity when our phones conveniently didn't get the order. I wouldn't put it past them to decide that they've paid out enough money for that day and kick you offline. Not to mention, we all have at least one restaurant in our market that we avoid like the plague. Maybe they're notoriously slow. Maybe is working and fucking everything up. Or maybe the traffic is just not worth the trip. Not to mention parking fees, tolls, and restaurant staff that completely ignore us. There are an unlimited number of reasons that you might want to decline an order. But under this model, you're going to have to suck it up, Buttercup. Moving on. I'd like to remind you that this is not a company that's known for ethics. There's also the issue that upfront payment information is not shown. That customer could have tipped $10, but we won't see a cent of that on the initial offer screen. What's to stop them from taking most or all of that tip? Don't forget, they have been caught doing that before. If this is sounding pretty fucked up to you, we're not even to the worst of it yet, but stick around, we'll get there shortly. Let's jump further into the one decline per hour. DoorDash doesn't give a fuck about driver safety. This is evident by the fact that they're encouraging all of us to carry cash for their stupid fucking cash on delivery program. That program makes us all targets. So what happens when you decline that 15-mile order and your next one is delivering to a gang-infested trap house at 11 o'clock at night? You can decline and your dash will end, or you can accept the order to earn your fake $14 an hour, risking your safety along the way. And that brings up another interesting question. You can decline one order per hour. Is that hour from 11 to 12? Or is that a 23 cent per minute hour? I feel like DoorDash's perception of time is straight out of a Salvador Dali painting. Remember, people, you're not actually making $14 an hour. From that $14, you need to deduct your gas and tax at the very minimum. That's not even factoring in increased maintenance on your vehicle, parking costs, tolls a dasher may need to pay, insurance, etc. These are things that dashers need to keep in mind when they're accepting or declining orders. After all, those are the costs that eat into our profits. But it gets worse. You remember when I said at the beginning of the video that participation in this program could get you deactivated and your hard-earned money taken? Let's go back to DoorDash's website and read more about that. This section reads, are there any other terms or conditions that I should know about? We may modify or end this pilot at any time, and a dasher's inclusion in the program is not guaranteed and may be revoked. We reserve the right to delay payment for purposes of investigation and to withhold payment or close the accounts of any dasher if we determine in our sole discretion that a dasher has used or attempted to use this pilot in a fraudulent, abusive, or otherwise suspicious manner, or in violation of any applicable law or regulation. That's legalese for they can deactivate you and steal your fucking money. Now, realistically, most drivers will not run into this scenario. However, I can think of a scenario where DoorDash would assume that we're committing fraud. Let me know in the comments if you've ever had a restaurant mark an order ready for pickup when it wasn't actually ready. I sure have. There's a couple of restaurants that do that on a regular basis in my market, the shady fuckers. Essentially, when a restaurant marks that the order is ready when it's really not, they're telling DoorDash that the driver should be on their way, and DoorDash could assume that the driver is milking the clock. Let's remember, DoorDash isn't exactly the pillar of ethical business practices. If you try this pilot program, get deactivated, and DoorDash keeps your money, I want to know about it. If you want to be a top dasher and run your car into the fucking ground, be my guest. At least you'll see upfront payment information. At the end of the day, you'd probably make more money doing that than this. But man, if only there was a way that drivers in medium to larger markets could ensure that they never had to take a bad order. Wait, there is. Sign up for as many apps as you can and cherry pick the hell out of them. In most markets, DoorDash is far from the only game in town, and frequently, they're the least paying. Even if you do occasionally win with this new pay model versus base pay, you lose the fundamental thing that makes doing gig work so great: your freedom. Now it's your turn. Let me know in the comments what you think of this pilot. Is it in your market? If it comes to your market, do you plan on trying it? If you see a new pilot program or something strange in your market, please get in touch with me. I don't make it difficult. You can follow me on Instagram at ZachDrivesFast, and I have a very active and welcoming Discord community. The link to both of those will be in the description below. If you haven't done so yet, please do consider pressing the like and subscribe buttons so you never miss news, tips, tricks, and ride-alongs with a healthy dose of humor. My name is Zach. Take care.